This is the Balanced Advisor Podcast with Dr. Travis Perry, helping financial advisors like you achieve balance in their lives.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Balanced Advisor Podcast. I'm Dr. Travis Perry. Today we have with us Mark Drouillard. He's a CFP and managing partner at Wealth Management Plus, a boutique financial advisory firm in Michigan. He oversees all operations at the firm and spends most of his time on business development initiatives. M&A, mergers and acquisitions within the wealth management industry is his focus, where he derives the most satisfaction professionally. He has edit this part, guys. He has I don't know how to have a problem with this part. He has executed several acquisitions of aging advisors during the past 10 years. Succession planning for aging financial advisors, coupled with less wealth management career entrants, is a topic we all need to be aware of. So welcome, Mark, to the Balanced Advisor Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. We talked in the pre-show about burnout, mergers, acquisitions, about your team, about your personal life. And so we're going to be just throwing you right here in the mix with the just kind of intro. Tell us, how did you get into this industry? How did you get to where you are right now?
Sure. Well, I was pretty young when I started. I was in a different career track, not real happy right out of college. I studied chemistry and environmental matters, had a job in that world. 2 or 3 years into it, I was staying in touch with an old friend of mine who had entered the financial services space, and he seemed to be doing really well and talking to me about money matters and finance, and I always kind of had an interest in that. And he started kind of saying, hey, maybe you ought to consider this career field. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. And then another year went by, and I decided I'm going to reach out to him, and I did. And I said, I think I need to make a change. And I went and got licensed up. And then the next thing was, you got to move to this state. So I'm like, oh, I can't stay in Michigan? Well, if you want to work with me, I'm in Minnesota. So I said, all right, packed up what little I had to my name. I think it was about 25 years old, and jumped on a plane with a suitcase. And that's literally all I had. And went there for a couple of years and got trained. And I've been in the industry ever since, albeit a couple twists and turns along the way. It was one of the best decisions I made, was to just take a flyer, and I was young and didn't have a family and able to do it, fortunately. And from there, I stayed with that large firm and went into the management track and started, recruiting and training. 20 years ago, that was kind of the path. There were a lot of young people coming into the industry, as you probably know. And unfortunately, it seemed like some of the, it was like, let's throw a bunch of mud at the wall and see what sticks. The people I worked with, we tend to have a lot more mud sticking than many, and we did really well at the training and selecting of people and giving them good career paths to help service the demand for financial services in the United States. Really was huge. Still is. I ended up in another city, Cleveland, Ohio, for a number of years to run a large region for the firm. Managing over 100 people when I was done after 5 years. Started feeling like, I think I want to get back home to Michigan. And left the big firm, went back into a regional setting, did some business development for that firm, experienced being a partner and an equity shareholder, but started realizing, hey, I've worked a lot of hours for a lot of years in a row, still a single man looking to have a family, and it wasn't happening. Just didn't feel right. That's when I decided I'm going to take a break. I called it a sabbatical, and I left the firm and sold my interest and said, I'm not sure if I'm coming back or not, guys. And people were supportive of me. I did some soul searching for several months and learned a lot about the M&A space, which is what I focus on today, as you mentioned earlier. Via the connections in the investment banking, private equity world. I tried to really enter that field And I kind of got shut out because I wasn't 25 anymore and I didn't know how to build spreadsheets and all the things they were looking for. But I did learn the trade by doing some small scale, deal making, if you will. And then I realized, boy, there's a lot of aging advisors in our industry of wealth management. And some people actually recruited me back into the wealth management space, although I always had my licenses and practiced as a consultant. I wasn't real active for a couple of years there. And I went full force back into it around 08, 09 when the financial world was turning upside down. It was kind of the safe play too, because there was always a way to make a good living there. And by then I had a wife and a couple of children getting older, and I needed to have a steady income again. So I started doing M&A back in the wealth management space, albeit in a smaller role in the independent world, where I didn't have to worry about managing 15, 20, 100 people anymore. And today I run a small boutique firm, 4 or 5 people in it, and slow, steady pace of growth.
Love that. I'm going to back you up a little bit. You said you took a sabbatical. You were kind of in the industry. You left it and came back. I think this is important. You're the first guest on the show I've interviewed that has such a path. I know we all have different paths. A lot of us either career changers to get here. We start early and we've really made it. Like you said, kind of get thrown up against the wall. We call it, spaghetti to see if the spaghetti sticks. Sort of thing. Is the spaghetti done, right? Throw it against the wall, see if it sticks. Mm-hmm. But for you, that you didn't really stick. You got burned out, so to speak. Where was the burnout? Why did you decide to take that sabbatical?
It had been kind of building up. Probably after about year 10 is when I started noticing, I don't know if, I felt as happy doing what I was doing. I was working a lot of hours. There were pressures to, keep delivering results by, people I worked with. And I kind of did some soul searching. I had the luxury, that regional firm did sponsor me and help me go do a University of Chicago MBA program to kind of get a little more well-rounded business background to grow within that firm, is I think what they hoped. But what came of that was, meeting a lot of people and acquaintances in different industries that kind of got me thinking, maybe I need to explore what's out there in the whole world, not just the financial services world. And that's what really spurred me to take that sabbatical. And also I wasn't, I think I mentioned, I wasn't married yet, and having my family was important, and I hadn't started that process. And maybe I was just not, able to have the time to get the freedom I needed to start doing things I wanted to do, and hopefully meet the right person to grow a relationship with. Yeah.
So, a lot of it had to do with, as you mentioned, relationship. You didn't have the opportunity. You were traveling a lot. Essentially, you were out of balance, right? Could we say that? Could we say that you were struggling with balance?
Very, very fair way to describe it.
Which is interesting to me. And the reason being, obviously, this is the Balance Advisor show here, the podcast. What's interesting about that is that's exactly why I left the industry, literally because I lost my balance and I was trying to figure out why. And eventually I came back to the industry to help the industry, no longer as an advisor, but as an advisor to advisors, so to speak. So I think, we have a lot in common here, Mark, as we look at our tracks and where we've gone. But now you've been able to build a business with more balance. Am I right on that?
For sure. It started with just, I think, balance is kind of a broad term, but if you're happy with, the choices you're making and the path you're on, all of a sudden, I think results and business relationships tend to solidify and come into play and start working in your favor again. So balance is one way. Happiness is another way I like to describe it. Is if you're not happy, a lot of things aren't probably going to fall into place as quickly. And I found some happiness, and I started meeting the right people, and some of the wrong people came into my world again. And I found it easier to part ways and pivot into an area that be it the practice I was helping run or I purchased or whatever. I want to be with people I want to work with every day. And that's why I only have 4 people in my practice today. And, even in this boutique firm, once upon a time, we had upwards of, I think, 10 or 12 people, and a lot of them weren't the right fit. So hence the reason I'm a business owner is I get to at least have a little more say in who I partner with and work with as teammates.
Yeah, and that's a whole different other discussion, which we'll get to, I think, here later. You're kind of in the driver's seat now, right? Versus the other way around, being in a large firm, seeing to feel stick, selling products or services or whatever. Now you're able to decide what you want your firm to look like. So wonderful job. I mean, getting back to the industry, I had one mentor of mine who said, Travis, you probably won't come back to this industry if you leave it. And I thought it almost became my reason for returning. Like, I wanted to show him, no, I'm coming back, but I'm coming back better. I want to help this industry really to improve. So let's talk about this, because balance is really where you and I come together on why we left and essentially why we came back. What is your definition of balance? What does balance look like to you?
Well, I think having the freedom to, set some parameters for, when I'm going to do things, whether it's for my family, my personal hobbies and interests, or work, and being able to think a little bit about, whether it's time balance or, as I mentioned, who I work with and what kind of clients we talk to, or if I do an acquisition. A lot of times the successful wealth management acquisitions or mergers that I've been involved in had to do with the people. I resonate with the people, and then we figure out how to get all the details done. And I found that to be kind of the theme. Is balance for me is really connecting with the right people. And then there are some, no more work in evenings or Saturdays was a big one years ago. I just realized, boy, if I'm going to have some freedom and some balance in my life to explore other interests, I can't be working all those hours. And we only have so much energy and so many hours in a day.
Yeah, 100%. So it's really for you looking at where you're spending your time, right? You're feeling like, yeah, when I'm spending my time on the things that matter, that you feel balanced, correct?
Absolutely. And to take it a step further, within work, the work balance is, I think, where a lot of people might, struggle too. We often hear about wearing all the hats in your practice, or too many hats. I realized real quickly, like, I'm not going to be good at certain things. I don't want to retrain myself or try to get good at them within the practice. So I knew I wanted to work with other people and then, focus on what my passions within the industry were, which was growing via mainly inorganic methods, recruiting other people and merging with practices that needed to be merged, or outright buying them if they were possibly an aging advisor. And that's where I focused most of my time, and then made sure I partnered with other people that could do the other things in the practice that needed to get done.
Yeah. So I came across a trainer that pointed out a book to me called The E-Myth, right, by Michael Gerber. I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yes.
He talks about wearing all the hats. And, he was one of Michael Gerber's first coaches from his program. And he ended up coaching and certifying me in time management. And, I've taken that and not really done much on the business side, but much more on the personal side, taking principles and been able to take my PhD in family and human development and say, okay, where's the balance between, the family, home, personal life, and work, and kind of focus on those principles that direction. And you're absolutely right, because if you don't have great balance at work, if you're wearing too many hats here, you don't really have the time to put in to other things, because you're constantly becoming, a workaholic in that space. What has helped you the most to not wear all the hats? What would you say?
Well, certainly was when I re-entered into the industry, I came into a reasonably sized with a decent amount of employees. So right away I saw, all right, all these people have different skills and talents. I'm not starting from square one. I got recruited back into the industry, as I mentioned earlier, and it was on a team. So right away I thought, all right, how can I fit into the team? How can I start to help the team shape itself? Because I was going to be a leader, one way or another. That kind of was at my core. I wasn't going to just be an employee, doing a menial task. I came in at a little higher level and thought, all right, I got to do it different this time. And so it's just making sure I understood who were the people, what are their skills, how do I help them chase their passions within the industry? Because everybody kind of migrates towards something, whether it's client acquisition or they're really good face-to-face servicing or building, investment models, or I've met people that are really into, insurance and life insurance and those types of, things, get their juices flowing. Partnering with them so I didn't have to wear those hats was how I started right from the get-go when I re-entered the industry.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That look on it. What I also kind of relate to this a little bit. I think about those who come in to other industries like military service, right? If they don't come in with any ranking, they start at the bottom, and getting up to the top is really difficult. I remember 2001, and my uncle, he was in the service, and he said, you know what, Travis, I know you want to come in as a pilot. Like I was thinking I would go in as a pilot right after 9/11 and just enlist. He's like, whatever you do, I get it. Like it's part of you. Like you're thinking about doing this. You want to fly, you want to be a pilot, but why don't you go get some education, get a degree so you can come in as an officer. That's kind of what it sounds like to me, in my mind, like, hey, you dabbled in the industry and you came back sort of as an officer. So let's talk a little bit about being in this industry and having, the time for you to really, balance the work as you've scaled your business. You've used merger and acquisitions to do this. So how have you scaled your practice while also being able to keep that balance that really kind of drove you out of the practice and to begin with? What have you done? What are some of your secrets there to say, okay, yeah, I've scaled it while I've kept my balance?
Well, one thing I've realized was looking for good people is really important, whether it was through just networking and meeting other advisors or getting acquainted with teammates of maybe an aging advisor I was courting to possibly merge or buy their business. And I got really good at finding good people and thought, the last acquisition I did came with 2 advisors. They happened to be female, which I didn't have in my practice at the time. And I always knew from the beginning, these are good people. They seem to work hard. They really have a passion about servicing the clients. The aging advisor, the gentleman, was getting up there in age. And it took us 4 years of getting to know each other. And but I always told people who were asking me, why are you so committed to this group? Because even their product mix and what they were doing was a lot different than how we were doing it at that time in our practice. I said, it's about the people. And sure enough, a year and a half into that transaction, we're very happy we did it. And they've really taken another load off of everybody who was here already. So yeah, the people equation, I don't know. I've gotten better at, hey, I'm willing to pay for good people. If you shortcut and think you can do all that training and shortcut on paychecks, and that's just not going to be a good equation in the long haul, I believe.
Yeah, so really for you, I mean, it's the people factor. It's getting the right people in the right spots on the bus, as good to great points out. What do you think are some of your biggest challenges of trying to keep that balance? What is it that might throw you out or like might tempt you to lose the balance, even albeit a short period of time? What is it that you might struggle with here, Mark?
Well, balance related, sometimes it's been challenging to make sure I'm doing certain tasks within the work day because once you learn how to enjoy your family and all the things that a family can drag you into as far as sporting events and extracurriculars and just fun stuff being around them, sometimes your work can suffer because you're over chasing those things. So I think more recently, that's what I struggle with, making sure I deliver, quantitative results for my team. And, as years go by, we all lose a little bit of energy towards the tasks we're supposed to be doing within the business. Whereas in the old days, I spent all my time in the business. Now I got to make sure I get enough time in the business, and that's more just working smarter versus harder. That whole saying. And so yeah, sometimes I struggle with that. I've got teammates that count on me, and I have a certain role, and we don't do an acquisition for 2 or 3 years in a row. I feel like I'm not delivering.
Yeah. So at this point, probably some of the biggest issues that you're facing is really bringing in new clientele, right? Kind of make that work balance that you were talking about before. And merger and acquisition, there's pros and cons to that, and I agree. Like there should, as you mentioned, this is a topic we all need to be aware of. Like the aging population of advisors give this opportunity. This is a real thing. Compared to other industries, though, if I look at like dentists or doctors, they've got this is very streamlined. As far as merging, acquiring other practices, there's very official ways to go about this. It seems like, there are some companies that are doing M&A. There are some places to go and buy and sell, businesses. And maybe this is part of as financial advisors. And I know some programs that offer this as a service. But what are maybe some of the biggest, advantages to doing some M&A as part of your growth strategy?
Well, certainly, unless you have a really good business model that delivers organic growth, certainly I think I got into the M&A only kind of because I tried to do it on a global basis, not in wealth management. So I found it in a roundabout way, but it woke me up to, wow, if we can go figure out how to partner with somebody and get 200 clients on a list, it might take me 12 months to get that done. But one thing we know about our industry is those relationships can be very sticky. Even if you say, here's your new advisor, they never met that person, and the old advisor retired out and just kind of introduced us, 90% plus of those clients just, okay, yeah, that's great, and you guys seem good, let's move forward. So that if you're, capable and patient enough to do a merger or an acquisition, I think it's worth putting a little bit of time and effort into it, or partnering with people. Maybe, like you mentioned, there are some services and, investment banker types that run around in our industry helping good practices find that. In the meantime, you certainly got to focus on organic growth too. And that's maybe a shortcoming we have, is not as good at the organic growth as we'd like to be.
Yeah, and I've heard some others, been on the podcast before, say you got to be careful with the M&A if that's your soul, because it can become a problem long term. So, good and bad. And I have clients that do this. They're acquiring businesses all the time. Obviously, there is a need, right? But like comparing again to dentists and doctors, they can come in, they can buy a practice. It's solid, it's set, they know where we're going. Or a lot of times advisors might come and purchase a business or practice, and they experience a huge, outflow of clients because it's not the right fit anymore. They don't like the personnel or whatever. Obviously, there's a lot of issues, and I'm not the expert at all. So I've just heard them. I've heard of these challenges. What was interesting is when I was getting to the point where balance was a struggle for me, and I wasn't getting that balance I wanted at Northwestern where I started, where I was a spaghetti, slap on the wall. I actually was going to acquire a practice. And so I started down this road of the acquisition, And I realized pretty quickly as I opened up the books that it was not the practice that I wanted to take over. And I'm so glad I didn't, pay any money for that and have that experience. But it kind of opened my eyes to, oh my goodness, like where is the help for this? I know you do help advisors a little bit to maybe help them to do some of this by referral. If it's not the right fit for you, you might refer out. But let's talk about what other advisors maybe they struggle with in general. It's kind of shifting our gears a little bit. What do you see some other issues that advisors struggle with when they're trying to have both the balance and the growth? They want to grow their business and they want to keep their balance. What do you see in the industry as some other issues that pitfalls that they may be struggling with?
Well, a couple of things. Getting the next new client for many advisors is a struggle, and trying to get either more referrals from their existing clients or networking with CPAs, attorneys, other professionals, taking the time even to have a concerted effort to let your current client base know you would really appreciate and take care of any referrals that send your way. When you get so busy in the everyday tasks, one of the first things that goes on the back burner with many advisors, in my observation, is that kind of marketing effort. And then all of a sudden 6 months go by or a year and you're thinking, geez, I got 2 clients and one of them's not that great and the other one was pure luck. So I think that's always been a struggle in our industry. We hear of other doctors and dentists. You mentioned they're getting referrals all the time because who doesn't want to refer their dentist who's doing a great job? Or I have a dermatologist friend. I send him 10 referrals a year, I think. And we laugh. I'm like, I haven't got any referrals from you. It's just it's hard to refer to the financial services industry, I think, is what the data shows. So we have to work that much harder. And it's very hard if you're on your own and you don't have other teammates or partners and you haven't divided, the division of labor theory. And I think that's where a team can grow, is if you have people that are good at the marketing and some are good at client service, some are good at, the back office, platform technology, portfolio building. That's where I think you see the acceleration in these small group practices that leverage each other's talents. Being on your own is going to be real hard. It can be done, and you should work on the balance, but it's not going to be easy.
This seems to be a theme that I'm catching with our discussion today, and even in the pre-show, of having the right team, having the right people around you. What would you say is some 1 or 2 things that have really helped you to build and grow this team?
Well, some of it had to do with just being at the right place at the right time. But even then, if you don't respect what you have sitting right in front of you and the opportunity to, nurture maybe a certain person that's around you that has a different skill set, it doesn't happen overnight. But if all of a sudden you start having discussions routinely, well, maybe we should do this together, or maybe I could hire you to do certain things. There is, you don't have to merge and have a formal partnership. There's ways to get help from the likes of you, even Travis, to do certain things in a practice. And we have to have an open mind and talk. Just yesterday, I had a banker who reached out to me after a few weeks. And at first, the conversation with him at this juncture, I thought, well, we don't seem to have much in common. But I took the call because he was following up, and 30 minutes later, we both found some common ground. He started to understand what my business model really was like and how he could support it. And I was really happy I took that call. Sometimes we just blow the call off versus, hey, maybe take a chance, go have lunch with that certain center of influence, or maybe it's an advisor I know across town that I don't really know that well, but hey, maybe I can go have lunch with her and see what she's up to. You got to take a little time out of your everyday routine, I believe, explore a little, and remember, it's all about people.
Great advice. I appreciate you kind of wrapping us up here with what, advice you would give to advisors about building teams and, partnerships. It seems like you're a very open-minded person to new ideas, exploring how it might kind of organically work together versus here's a structure. We're going to fit it all together. Excuse me. Let me take a quick drink. I'm struggling on this one today. We'll have to edit that part. But yeah, to get back here, I was going to say, we'll start the edit right from here, guys. What I was going to say is that, you seem very open-minded about the idea of kind of some organic partnerships, some organic opportunities. Maybe give us one example of how this has worked out for you, how that has, helped the business.
Well, I think I alluded to a little while ago, the recent acquisition I did. I had people at my broker dealer and in my circle kind of trying to push me away from pursuing this acquisition because their business model was very different. And but I had a good sense about the people. Even the seller and I resonated, even though he built his business on the seminar business model. I've never done that. He had all kinds of products he was offering that we just don't do much of. And people were, hey, there's a lot of different businesses and better ones for you to go pursue, Mark. Why are you chasing this one? And I ended up with two great partners in the female advisors that I have now and a nice client list. And it's worked out great. Sometimes you just got to go with your own gut and instincts about the situation and the people and not listen to all the noise around us. And I use the saying, when somebody gives you lemons, what do? Make lemonade. And I try to follow that. I don't always keep the lemons, but I a lot of times keep 90% of the lemons others throw away because I figure out what's the good in this lemon, not that it's just, it's a little old, it's starting to turn. I'll find the good part of it if I can.
Love it. Thanks for leaving us with that tidbit. Appreciate that example. And, if you're interested in having conversations with Mark, what's the best way to reach out to you organically, possibly be able to partnership on deals or mergers and acquisitions in the future, or even just, talking to you about this in more detail? What's the best way for other advisors to reach you?
Well, there's always just go to our website. The firm name is Wealth Management Plus, and it's wm-plus.com. So you can find me that way, and phone numbers, addresses, emails, everything's there you need, and love to talk.
Excellent. We'll put those in the show notes. Appreciate your willingness to be on the show, to give back, help this industry as you're moving forward. Grateful to have you. We can talk about balance, how it's affecting your business, how you're growing it, and most importantly, again, the scaling, this aspect of being able to grow and have your team really organically be put together with partnerships. So thanks again for your time and effort. And thank you, listeners, for making the time here to be with us. Share, like, subscribe, do all the things. If you enjoyed this, let us know so we can continue to provide some great content to you as this is growing, and share this with other advisors. So have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Mark. And remember, everyone, live life on purpose.
Thank you, Travis. And thanks for all you do for keeping us all balanced.
Thank you.